Welcome to the Valley Today, a public service presentation of KAIL-TV. We continue our conversation with Ken Eaton, an American GI captured in 1951 by North Koreans and a POW for 2.5 years. The book Missing Dog Tags is the story of Ken's capture and eventual release from North Korea. Ken Eaton and the book Missing Dog Tags, up next on the Valley Today. Welcome to the Valley Today. We are with Ken Eaton. We are discussing the book Missing Dog Tags, and Ken was a prisoner of war from 1951 to 1953 in North Korea. That's a heck of an experience.
30 months.
30 months. Seemed like 5 or 6 lifetimes, huh?
Yeah, it did to me. In fact, the feeling that most of us had in the rear camps was, we're probably never going to get out of this.
Right.
And it was just, we lived on the borders of Manchuria, on the Yalu River, sub-zero weather, daily experiences, indoctrination courses by the Chinese, trying to teach us Marxism, Leninism.
To be a good communist.
Yeah.
And you just weren't going for it, were you?
No.
Well, when we had left off on the last show, we were at the, you were just leaving the Chinese hospital. You had been there, that was your...
About 6 weeks.
That was about the middle of your incarceration, right? The Chinese hospital. And where was that at?
That was south of Pyongyang, the North Korean capital. I had been there after one of my escapes, this second escape. I had been there for several weeks, 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks, in we'll call a city jail-like. The town was just literally bombed out, just walls and concrete and brick walls and vaults and fireplace stacks sticking up. But every night, every afternoon, just before sundown, the town would just literally come alive.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for 5 or 6 weeks, and finally was put with another group of American prisoners, more ragged than I, or at least as ragged, and marched south till we came to the town of Shandong, which is maybe 10 or 15 miles or 20 miles south of the North Korean capital.
And was this after your second escape, or was this before your second escape?
That was my second escape.
When
we walked to Shandong, the Chinese frontline hospital.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that, about your escape and.
Well, that escape, I had learned a little bit from the first escape that you got to be awful careful about what village or what old Korean house you go to, farmer, that you ask for food or if you steal food. I learned that there's very few dogs. I never got barked at but one time.
Yeah, that's because they ate them.
They ate the dogs, right. Or they didn't leave them out so that
somebody else could steal them and eat them.
Yeah. And I stole food from villages. Also, the second escape, the ground was softening a little bit, and I was able to dig up sweet potatoes. I'm not sure if I don't think I ever found an Irish potato, but sweet potatoes. And I got some eggs from an old hen. I also ate the old hen that was in a part of his shed. What doesn't happen in Korea is the lumber is so scarce and trees so scarce, and no one cuts a green tree down. They have no fences. So anything they have is unprotected that way. But the homes are so scattered, because the land is so poor. There's not a lot of villages where they're prospering with large orchards or large fields planted. It's really rare you come across one. I did cross a few valleys that had millet, sorghum cane, corn. I did where there was maybe 15 to 30 North Korean homes there, and they combined their labors and raise the food together.
Do you think the lifestyle was better in the South than it was in the North?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And was that because of the American presence, or because maybe they were just a little more organized in the South, and maybe the land was a little more fertile?
Well, they do grow. They did grow rice in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen rice fields in the South, similar to the ones I've seen in Japan when I was stationed there. But I don't think I ever seen one rice paddy in North Korea, and I was all over North Korea. My second escape, I walked perhaps 50 or 60 miles. I'm not sure the distance.
And you were working your way west. You were trying to make it to the sea, right?
Yeah, to the Yellow Sea.
Yeah.
Between the peninsula of Korea and the mainland of China.
And in the book, you're going up and down the hills. You're going up the hill to stay out of sight, and you're coming down to these farms and farmhouses at night. And I guess you would sleep during the day, and you would walk at night, right?
I'd walk at night. Yeah.
Walk and run.
Walk and run.
You were jogging.
Yeah, I'd jog. Well, jogging to me in my condition, you got to consider my condition.
Right.
But my condition was a lot faster than my walk. But the actual outrun, I think I did do some running, but it wasn't the kind of running we would do here in America.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a trot, perhaps.
Yeah.
What my condition would put up with. When I would have better meals that I would steal out and fix for myself, within 2 or 3 days, my body would feel better, and I thought I was jogging.
Yeah.
But I'd walk fast. I would really walk fast and attempt to jog.
So the second time you'd escaped, you were loose for how long, do you think?
Maybe 6 weeks or maybe 5 weeks.
Wow.
Again, maybe 4 weeks. Again, I had no way of knowing that, and I wasn't considering on my escape. Food was my biggest worry, and being seen by an airplane spotter. I think I talked to you about the airplane spotters, but the way they alert their trucks and oxen moving north and south.
And you're talking about airplane spotters from the north. You're not talking about airplane spotters from the south.
Well, I'm talking about airplane spotters moving either direction.
Oh, okay.
Coming from.
But these were the Koreans, the North Koreans, or the Chinese.
Yeah, this is the North Koreans or the Chinese, and they would have either in the mountains, and they will fire a gun the minute they hear a plane coming at night or daytime. But mostly night, because everybody could see them in the daytime, generally speaking. But mostly night, if the airplane spotter would be on the highest mountains around you, would fire his rifle, and if he was Korean, he'd holler "Bingi Waso," and if he was Chinese, he'd fire his gun and yell "Fichi Laila." It means either one means airplanes coming, and that would go on every 200 or 300 yards across the top of the mountains all the way to the north. As the plane approached, the guns would repeat that. It
was a relay.
It was a relay. They didn't have any other way of notifying one another, or telephones or wires or anything like that. But it worked, because I would see cargoes coming down the dirt roads with their lights on, and they'd run maybe 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, then they'd shut them off. But the minute this happened, all the lights would go off, and it kept our planes from finding them. I would see them. Our planes from a distance would see lights maybe 15 miles in front of them. I don't know how far an airplane at night can see lights, but if they've seen the lights, when they got in that general area, they'd drop flares.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would find them and strafe them or bomb them.
And there was a lot of aircraft at night looking for targets too. A lot of B-24s, B-26s?
B-24s.
Yeah.
Or 26s, I don't know which. I'm not that good on the twin engine planes.
But that was just kind of the introduction of the jet at that point. They were using the F-80, but they were also using the World War II stuff, the
propelled stuff.
propeller.
Yeah. Yeah, the only time I ever seen F-80s fly was daytime.
Yeah.
And at nighttime it was
And
P-50.
that's how you could tell the Americans from the Soviet equipment, is because the Soviets had the swept wing and the Americans were flying the straight wing.
Yeah, we had F-80s and they had the MiG.
Yeah. So you're on the loose on your second escape for about
anywhere from 4 to 6
4
weeks.
to 6 weeks. And how did you get captured?
Well, I made it to the Yalu River, or to the Yellow Sea, and I didn't get right down to the sea. I seen an old man come in I was up on top of a mountain, and mountains there aren't like the mountains in America. They're not 6,000 feet, they're 500 feet, or thereabouts, or maybe a little more, but generally speaking. And then along their coastline, it's not that high. And I'm maybe 300 to 500 feet, and I see an old man with a swept wing, with a swept paddle over the back of a double-ended boat about 15 feet long or 20, I don't know how long it was, sweeping and bringing his boat in. And there didn't seem to be even any surf, but there must have been a little surf. But he comes in, and I watch him, and then he walks through a small valley through the edge of these mountains to an old farmhouse I'd seen back about a quarter to a half a mile. So I watched the old farmhouse, and there was just a mama son and a papa son there. And after dark, I finally eased down to it. I'd seen no dogs, no animals like that. And I looked through the windows, and they're eating. I just opened the door and go in, and they were just scared half to death. And she threw her hands up, and he looked at me and said something, and I called him Abaji, Grandpa, or Papa San, and Amani, and I explained to them in Japanese the best I could that I wasn't going to hurt them. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And I said, Tabado nai, Tambado nai, gohen no, rice no. And they were eating, and he said something to her, and she immediately started filling me up a bowl, a gourd to eat out of. And I had all I could eat. And he rolled a cigarette, and then I looked at him and told him dozo, and he gave me tobacco to roll my paper to roll a cigarette.
And that's a recurring theme in this whole 30 months is tobacco.
Tobacco.
That was a hot commodity.
Hot tamale. hot commodity, right.
Yeah.
And
so you stayed at night, you went to sleep, and then in the morning...
back she came.
Yeah?
Well, there was two North Korean soldiers with, well, I'm not sure about burp guns. I think one had a burp gun. No, I think both of them had burp guns. So they sprayed the front of the house with maybe 15 or 20 shells and screaming in Korean, and then maybe shot 2 or 3 more times, just a couple of shots each. And then Mama Son yelled something, and she's yelling anyway, and so he's not saying much. Papa Son, I got them down in the kitchen floor. We're all laying down low so we can't be hit by the shells.
Yeah.
But Mama Son's screaming, and I assume that she's screaming just like anybody would. It's,
sure.
Please stop shooting.
Yeah.
Please stop shooting. But she must have told him that I didn't have a gun because they just walked right in the door. They slid the door back and walked right in and start screaming at me.
It's the third time you'd been captured. Second time you'd escaped.
No, that was the second time.
Well, I mean, you'd been captured the first time, you'd escaped once.
Oh,
and the second
you're
time
right.
you've been.
Yeah,
the third time you've been captured.
Yeah.
So now, from where do you? Oh, you know what? Let's take a break, and then we'll finish this story.
Okay.
We're with Kenneth Eaton. He wrote this book, Missing Dog Tags, about his experience as a POW in the Korean War, and we'll be right back right after this brief message. Welcome back to the Valley. Today we are with Ken Green discussing his book, Missing Dog Tags, Korean of War Prisoner, from 51 to 53.
Uh-huh.
And
30 months.
To continue the story, this the third time you've been captured, and were you captured by Koreans or Chinese?
That was Koreans.
They were Koreans.
That was 2 Korean soldiers. And then after I talked about, I'd slept there all night.
Right.
And these this girl came back and brought these Korean soldiers with her. Now, I didn't pay a lot of attention to her. I think maybe she didn't even stay, but how did they know I was there? Right. I had to assume that.
Somebody had to be watching the place.
Yeah.
It was pretty isolated too, wasn't it?
It was really isolated.
Yeah.
So she had to have, someone had to have known I was there. It had to have been her. But they took me outside and beat me up. Well, one held a gun on me, the other one worked on me with the butt of his rifle and knocked me down 2 or 3 times. I ended up with some, well, I didn't get the broken ribs yet, but the thing with the North Koreans are real bad about making prisoners dig their own grave. I found several places like that on armored patrols when I was on the line, where they dug their own grave and then had their hands wired behind them and was shot in the face. Mm-hmm. And so they started me digging my own grave. And in Korea, they don't have any shovels with metal scoops on them.
Right.
They have a very poor way to dig, but so consequently it was going to extend my life, I thought, longer. And the more I dug, I finally got down where it was just almost impossible with a stick to dig enough place out to get my body. I wasn't more than 6 or 8 inches or a foot, if I was a foot deep, when they decided to knock me down again. Or Mama's son and Papa's son was out screaming at me, and I took another beating, and then I started trying to talk to them in Japanese, and they didn't seem to respond real well at first, but finally they did, and they were going to shoot me, and I talked them out of it by simply speaking Japanese to them, and both these Korean soldiers could speak Japanese much better than I could.
Yeah.
Because their country had been occupied 38 years by the Japanese prior to the Second World War.
That was a recurring theme in your book, is a lot of prayer.
A lot of prayer.
And your mom had been praying for you quite a bit,
yeah.
But you'd been praying a lot to help you through all these ordeals. Mm-hmm. You finally end up on the river towards the north, towards Pyongyang?
You mean the North Yalu River?
The Yalu River.
The Yalu River. That's the extreme end of North Korea.
Yeah.
And it's Manchuria or China.
So you're in Manchuria at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the water, right?
Right. It's pretty nice in the summer, but in the winter, it's got the 4 seasons there.
Sub-zero weather.
Yeah,
it's
sub-zero
really cold.
weather. And so in the winter, they'd pull supplies across with the ox cart and on ice,
yeah.
And then in the summer, they'd bring it across on boats.
On boats, yeah.
And they were bringing in wood and food, right?
Yeah, they bring in wood and food the same way.
Yeah.
And when the food would come in, we were segregated in the camp by nationality and by rank and by color. And each we'll call them companies, because that's what they were called there, were companies, would supply, say, 15 or 20 to carry their supplies to their so-called kitchen, which is just another mud hut. And so every time food came in, all the different companies supplied people down to haul their supplies to them. Mm-hmm. And same way with firewood.
Yeah.
So
how long did you stay at the Yalu River? How long was that?
I stayed there 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, because of my escapes on the death march, it delayed my arrival at the rear camp.
You would have been there a lot sooner had you not been running away.
Well, I was captured February 11th, and I got to the Chinese hospital on a hill, which was an old temple,
right,
outside of the village where the prison camp was at. That's what they call the Chinese hospital. I got there just before Christmas, maybe I don't know how long, maybe.
So 10 months.
Yeah, a week or 10 days.
Or 11 months, or, yeah.
So that's
quite a long time.
That's how long I lived out.
Yeah.
Mostly.
And a lot of guys died. I mean, you were burying, guys every day.
Yeah.
Every day you were hauling dead bodies out, and it was just
guys would die in the rooms. Starvation was so bad that guys would die in the rooms and sitting up against we were so packed in these rooms, 20 to a room, it would be 10 by 10 approximately, and the guys would die with their eyes open from starvation, and we'd have to pull them out when the Chinese figured out someone was dying. But we learned after a while, don't take your dead out, because they come through and count noses, how many bowls of
so
food.
you'd have less rations if you had less bodies to count.
If you had less bodies. So if there were still 20 in there, the Chinese would come through and he'd go through and say, E-R, San, Su, Lu, Chi, Ba, and he'd counting everybody in there. And then he have a Chinese soldier up behind him with a box full of food, and they'd take this same dipper and dip that many dips on the floor, and then we divided it after they left.
They were trying to indoctrinate you into the communist ways. They had been teaching you for a couple of years, and they had been telling you about the peace talks going on, and then finally you're going to get shipped south. And this is in, what, about July of 1953?
Well, we were advised probably June that it looked like that they sent our sick and wounded, they claimed, out 2 or 3 months before that. That kind of clinched it for us, our thinking, that we're going to get out of this, because they took the sick and wounded out of all the camps and sent them. And
what do you think happened to them? Do you think they actually got sent south, or do you think they got killed?
No, they got sent because
they got sent south.
Yeah, because we heard about it later after we come home. The different ones I knew.
So now they get you on the rail, on railroad cars, don't they? And they're shipping you south. And I know I'm accelerating the story here because this book is, but you know, for the sake of time, time is our enemy here on television.
Sure.
They're sending you south. You're in rail cars, packed in like cattle. And then at a certain point,
they load us in trucks.
They get you in trucks.
Haul us to a village that's just north of Pammonjon, where they're going to trade us for Chinese and North Korean soldiers that's been held prisoner by the American forces. Then they haul us down in like 3 truckloads at a time. I happened to be, the day I went was in the second truck, and so we're sitting there waiting for the truck to be unloaded, and we're back about 75 yards. And when they finally move the truck, and they get to the point of letting us out of the back of the truck, the driver turns around, backs in, comes around and opens the back gate and runs to the front to get away from us, thinking that one of us was going to kill him, and that could have happened.
Yeah.
But what's standing out there is about 10 Marines in starched uniforms, and God, we couldn't wait to get out and touch those guys.
That was when it was over. Well, or the beginning of the end. Seeing the Marines. Ken, thank you for your service to this country. I'm sorry we're out of time on this. As I said, you know, time is my enemy. The book is Missing Dog Tags, an American GI in North Korea as a POW. You can find the book, www.missingdogtags.com. You can order it online at Amazon.com. And you get it at Barnes & Noble bookstores. You can order it online there too.
That's true.
Ken Eaton, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your service to this country. This is The Valley Today, and The Valley Today is a public service presentation of this TV station. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. The Valley Today is a public service presentation of KAIL-TV. Ken Eaton has suffered with PTSD since his Korean experience 60 years ago. For the book on Ken's experience, go to www.missingdogtags.com.